Being the new kid on the block, Ricky wanted so badly to be liked by the neighborhood kids. So he paid no heed to their snickers when they told him to follow the kickball that had bounced over a neighbor's fence. He hadn't yet heard any of the stories of the creepy old man that had been traumatizing children for decades. He hopped the fence, spotted the ball, and rushed over to grab it. With his task half completed, he triumphantly headed back towards his new friends. That was when a tall, willowy wisp of a man came around the side of the house with a garden hose. They stood there, staring at one another like some standoff in an old western. In this scenario, Ricky was the young, still wet behind the ears cowpoke, twirling his pistol around like it was a toy. The elderly man was the wizened old sheriff that wouldn't hesitate to shoot down anybody that thought they could waltz into his town and cause a ruckus. Before the boy could pull his pistol, so to speak, the old man squeezed the trigger and blasted him in the crotch. He laughed wildly and blasted him in the face for good measure as Ricky reached for his tender little genitals. The damp little boy just stood there in shock, with water dripping down his face and shorts. The old man dropped the hose and gave Ricky an annoyed look before leaning around and uttering a quiet, raspy-voiced, "Boo!" Ricky booked it for the fence and frantically scrambled over. He landed on the other side and ran as fast as he could. A moment later, the kickball he had forgotten in his panic to escape bounced off the back of his head. He spun around to see the creepy old man towering over the fence. The crooked grin on his wrinkled old face told Ricky that he wasn't done with him yet. Then he yelled the line that made the boy's life a living hell for the next few weeks. "Hey, you brats, stop pissing your pants in my yard." The kids called him Trickle Rickle after that. For the next month, the little boy wrestled for control of his emotions. The neighborhood kids were brutal with their name-calling, but the mean old man down the street affected him tenfold simply by sitting on his porch, day in and day out, glaring out into the neighborhood. Every time Ricky pedaled past the wicked old man's house, that grit-worn smile would turn toward him and stare with eyes like two burning coals. The solution to both his problems came to him one day when he was blowing up balloons for his sister's birthday party. That Sunday, he gathered all the kids of the neighborhood together. Amongst all the snickering and whispered utterances of Trickle Rickle, he handed out water balloons. Like a scene from Braveheart, he admonished their enemy and called them all to arms with the rallying cry, "Mr. Withers must die." The old man nearly swallowed his black and mild cigar when more than a dozen kids rushed his yard and began slinging water balloon grenades at him. He stood up in protest, but that only made him an easier target. He angrily swung his cane and shouted profanities until he was completely soaked from head to foot, except for a little area on the small of his back that somehow managed to stay dry. The barrage finally ended, and the kids scattered with yips of laughter echoing throughout the neighborhood. Ricky hid in a bush across the street and watched the whole battle unfold. With a few dollars from his piggy bank and a bike ride to the store, he had engineered the first step in his campaign to end Mr. Withers' reign of terror. He thought for sure the old grump would tuck his tail between his legs and stagger inside. But the stubborn old coot just sat back down, lit another cigar, and acted like nothing had happened. Nobody called him Trickle Rickle after that. Many more maneuvers were planned and executed on May Street that summer, with Ricky directing them all. Mrs. Talmage, who unfortunately lived next door to the old man, was baffled as to how the neighborhood kids managed to afford dozens of plastic pink flamingos, which they decorated his yard with. But it was definitely her favorite prank of the summer. Covering his front porch with plastic wrap and filling the makeshift pen with toads was a thing of genius that gave the mailman chuckles for a week. Many of the residents secretly enjoyed the perfectly harmless and inventive pranks that plagued the neighborhood grump. Eventually, the parents of the neighborhood stepped in and called a ceasefire, but they certainly took their time in doing so. Some of them had suffered at the hands of Mr. Withers when they were kids as well. That's right, the bitter old man had spent decades honing his special brand of mean. Punishments were dished out, and every child involved was ushered up Mr. Withers' front steps and made to apologize. It physically hurt Ricky, deep in his guts, to apologize. What bothered him the most was that the old fogey didn't even remember him. He was just one of many faceless kids the guy had harassed over the years. The old grump sat there soaking it all up, with a look of superiority stamped on his face. The lesson Ricky learned that day wasn't the intended one. From that point on, he plotted and acted alone, except on Halloween. A few dog turds, strategically placed in his mailbox, never gave the old man a whiff of any impropriety on the part of the neighborhood kids. A pail of salt water, periodically dumped in his garden in the middle of the night, only made him scratch his head in frustration with that year's wimpy squash yield. The number 9 on the front of his house that kept falling off and altering his address was just one of many little nuisances that had cropped up since he unknowingly made an enemy of the little boy down the street. Mr. Withers' actual name was Gerald P. Kramer, but the name the kids had given him too long ago to remember fit him like a glove. His thin, withered white hair waved in the breeze, looking as if it would pull free from his scalp at any moment and go in search of all the strands that had escaped the years before. Plenty of elderly people go all to fat, but not Mr. Withers. He was tall as a lamppost and just as skinny. He seemed to sway on his feet like a tall blade of grass when he'd venture to his mailbox. Ricky had wished many times throughout his childhood that the mean old man would just blow away on a heavy wind and leave the kids of the neighborhood to play in peace. Some kids who had grown up and moved away many years ago started the myth that Mr. Withers' hair was alive and it wriggled and writhed even when there was no breeze. I'm sure you can imagine how a freaky detail like that could take on a life of its own amongst children who still feared monsters under their beds and behind closet doors. Typical stories of him being a vampire or even a werewolf ran rampant amongst the less imaginative children. Some said he was a wraith that wouldn't let go of this world. He certainly looked like one. Others believed he escaped from an insane asylum because he could no longer ignore his insufferable hunger for the misery of innocent children. Ricky could never confirm anything supernatural or criminal about the old man. He just saw him as a mean old grump that deserved whatever bad things came his way. He was too young to understand that karma and revenge aren't synonymous with one another. The mischievous boy was well aware of how cruel some kids could be, but he had never witnessed outright cruelty from an adult until he met Mr. Withers. It was something that everyone learned eventually. Ricky might have learned that lesson a little too soon for his fragile young mind to handle. The angry little boy was playing with fire, fostering a bitterness that would eventually consume him if he didn't find a way to douse it. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel. There's so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so you won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do, and it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.